You've probably imagined your wedding day, or someone else's, the vows, the rings, the promise to stay together until death. It feels ancient. It feels like something humans have always done. But here's the strange part. For most of human history, marriage as you know it didn't exist. No rings, no ceremonies, no legal contracts binding two people together. So what did your ancestors do instead? How did they raise children, share food, and survive without the institution you assume is fundamental to human life? The real answer is far stranger than a wedding. Let's go back. Not centuries, hundreds of thousands of years. For most of the Pleistocene, humans lived in small nomadic bands, maybe 20 to 50 people. Everyone knew everyone. There was no concept of private property, because there was almost nothing to own. No houses to inherit, no bank accounts to protect. And without property, the entire logic behind modern marriage simply didn't apply. Marriage, as an institution, is largely a solution to a property problem. Who gets the land? Who gets the herd? Who counts as a legitimate heir? Take away property, and you take away most of the reasons marriage exists today. So, what replaced it? Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy spent decades studying early human child-rearing, and her research points to something surprising. Children weren't raised by two parents locked into an exclusive bond. They were raised by the group. Hrdy calls this cooperative breeding. Mothers, yes, but also aunts, grandmothers, older siblings, and unrelated adults who simply happened to be nearby. Everyone fed the baby. Everyone carried the baby. Everyone kept the baby alive. Think about that for a second. The idea of "it takes a village" isn't a metaphor. It's a literal description of how your species survived for hundreds of thousands of years. Pair bonds still existed. Biological anthropologist Helen Fisher has spent her career studying the chemistry behind human attachment, and her work suggests something called serial pair bonding was common. Two people would form a close attachment, often for a few years, long enough to get a child through its most vulnerable infant stage. Then that bond might dissolve. Another might form. No ceremony marked the beginning. No ceremony marked the end. Why a few years? Fisher's research points to something almost mathematical. Human infants are helpless for an unusually long time. 4 years is roughly how long it took, historically, for a child to become mobile and less dependent on constant care. Long enough for the biology of attachment to hold two people together. Not necessarily longer. This wasn't chaos. It was a system, just not the one you were taught to assume was universal. Kinship held everything together instead. Anthropologist Bernard Chapais has argued that early human kinship systems functioned like an invisible web, linking individuals not through marriage contracts, but through recognized bloodlines and reciprocal obligation. You didn't need a ring to know who your family was. You needed memory, proximity, and mutual survival. Everyone in the band had a role. Everyone was, in some sense, responsible for everyone else's children. There was no concept of "my kid" in the possessive way you might use it today. There was just the children, collectively protected, because a band that lost its children lost its future. Here's where it gets uncomfortable for modern assumptions. Sexual exclusivity, the core promise inside most modern marriages, likely wasn't the norm either. Multiple mating was common in many early human groups. Some researchers argue this served a biological purpose. If a child had uncertain paternity, multiple men in the group might invest in its survival, just in case. Paternity confusion, strange as it sounds, may have functioned as a survival strategy. That doesn't mean early humans lacked love or loyalty or grief when a partner died. It means the entire architecture of intimacy was built around group survival, not individual ownership. So, when did marriage actually begin? The shift starts around 10,000 years ago, with agriculture. Once humans began farming, land became valuable. Livestock became valuable. And for the first time, a person had something worth passing down. That single change rewired everything. If you have land to inherit, you need to know exactly who your heir is. If you need to know exactly who your heir is, you need certainty about paternity. If you need certainty about paternity, you need exclusive access to one woman's reproduction. Marriage, in its earliest legal forms, wasn't primarily about love. It was about property law wearing the costume of romance. Early marriage contracts in Mesopotamia weren't written by lovers. They were written by families negotiating land, livestock, and debt. The bride herself was often treated as part of the transaction, not a party to it. It would take thousands more years and a slow cultural transformation before marriage became associated primarily with romantic love at all. That idea, the one you probably grew up believing was timeless, is actually one of the newest parts of the entire story. So think about the pressure you might feel today. The idea that a relationship without a ring is somehow incomplete, that commitment only counts if it's legally documented. Your ancestors would find that idea almost incomprehensible, not because they didn't value commitment, they valued it deeply, but they built it through community, not contract. Maybe that explains something you've felt but never quite named: the exhaustion of raising children in isolation, one household cut off from every other, doing alone what your biology expects a dozen hands to help with. You weren't designed for a nuclear family behind a closed door. You were designed for a village that no longer exists. Maybe that's why friendship still pulls at you the way it does. Why a group chat that goes quiet feels like a small loss. Why the people who show up during a crisis matter just as much as, sometimes more than, the person you're legally bound to. Somewhere underneath all your modern arrangements, an older instinct is still running, the one built for bands, not households, for collective care, not private ownership. You didn't inherit marriage because it's natural. You inherited it because it solved a problem your ancestors didn't have until they started owning land. So the next time you see a wedding, or think about your own relationships, remember this: the ring on the finger is recent. The instinct underneath it, the pull toward connection, toward shared care, toward a group that has your back, that instinct is ancient, far older than any ceremony ever designed to contain it.